I'm pleased to introduce Todd May, Director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. He leads one of NASA's largest field installations with nearly 6,000 on or near-site civil service and contractor employees, including those at NASA's Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans, which is managed by the Marshall Center, and an annual budget of approximately $2.5 billion. Mr. May was appointed Deputy Director of Marshall in 2015. Prior to that, he managed the Space Launch System, or SLS program. SLS is the most powerful rocket ever built and is able to carry astronauts in NASA's Orion spacecraft on deep space missions, including to an asteroid and ultimately to Mars. And Dr. Marla E. Perez-Davis is Deputy Director of NASA's John H. Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio. Immediately prior to her current assignment, Dr. Perez-Davis served as Deputy Director of the Research and Engineering Directorate. In this position, she was responsible for leading, planning, coordinating, and managing all phases of Glenn's research and engineering activities to accomplish NASA's missions. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. Tell us, if you would, just a little bit about the exciting and really, I was kind of awestruck by what I saw in that video. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your respective centers.
Okay. Well, thank you, Commissioner Ludgood, for having us, and thank you, President Deluge and the NACO. I've only been here for about 24 hours, but it's quickly becoming clear to me that you guys really have your finger on the pulse of our communities all around this country, and that's part of why I'm really excited to be here to talk to you today. As you saw in the video, and the sound here is so good. I've actually never heard that video with that good a sound. So the counties do great with sound. I could almost drop the mic and walk away, but I want to tell you that NASA is building the foundational capabilities to take humans back out into deep space for the first time in over 40 years. And it's a really exciting time to be part of the agency. Deep space is actually very hard. We've been on the International Space Station now for over 15 years, round the clock, but the station's only about 300 miles away, and deep space is a long way away, and so when you go, you're going to be kind of Earth independent, and we humans are pretty needy, just like the humans in your counties. Our astronauts need their water and their air and their food and things like that, and so when you talk about going into deep space to the moon, which is hundreds of thousands of miles away, or Mars, which is millions of miles away, you're going to need all of these things to go with you, and so you need a large rocket and a capsule to be able to take the crew out and bring them back. And so the agency is building the Space Launch System, which you saw here. But what's really exciting and why that's important to you is that rocket is being built all over this country. Just the SLS piece, just the rocket piece of this program is in 43 states and 1,100 contracts. Over 800 of those are small businesses. We've actually got a book out there in the exhibits area. It's called "Are We in Your Backyard?" And I think it's a rhetorical question. Yes, we're in your backyard. But you can actually look your state up and see all the contracts that are there. We're in Ohio. We have over 90 contracts in Ohio itself. Companies like Amro, a fourth-generation family-owned company, is building large pieces for the Orion spacecraft and the large structure of the core stage of the rocket itself. I met a gentleman, Larry Phillips, from North Carolina. I hope he's out there. He came up and he was so excited. He pointed at the rocket and he said, "I build the foam for that." And I said, here's this little sticky here, a little thing that goes a bookmark. And I said, most of that picture is your stuff right there in North Carolina. And he said, it's really good for North Carolina because these are good paying jobs. And we've had some hits in our industry lately, and these jobs help buoy us. And I'll tell you that we see that from a big picture perspective at NASA. When we solve these really hard problems, we actually push the innovation economy forward. And I believe that going to the moon, building the International Space Station, the Space Shuttle, and now SLS really does push our economy forward and our innovation economy. Things like advanced manufacturing. We're doing things with 3D printing at Marshall that you wouldn't believe. We're building turbo machinery with nickel alloys, and we're doing things with composites you wouldn't believe. And all those things are pushing us into the future. Marla's going to talk about advanced propulsion, stuff that looks like science fiction. Those things are what push our economy forward and help us as a nation lead. So I'm really excited to be here today. I'll yield the balance of my time to Marla here. And the main thing I want to leave you with is I want you to be jazzed about NASA, about what we're doing with the Space Launch System, and about exploration, and how it also represents the future of you and your county. So thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to NACO to provide NASA with the opportunity to talk about what we do, but more important to talk a little bit more about how we can engage the local communities and the country to really deliver on this Dare to Dream. The video does a very good job telling, or informing the public about all the pieces and parts that we're working on. As Todd indicated, it's a very complicated and complex business that we by ourselves cannot accomplish without your support and all the great things that are being accomplished by the local community. From Cleveland, Ohio, I hope that many of you have visited NASA Glenn Research Center near the airport, and we do play a critical piece of the job or the task completing the SLS and Orion. We do the test, we do critical component testing, and the video shows some of that test. For example, we have the largest shaker table, and one of the things that we have to do with the service module is to simulate what this spacecraft is going to see in the environment, and one of them is vibration. So we also have a capability to put like 150 or 160 decibel, which is really the noise, to simulate what is the kind of vibration that the spacecraft is going to see. And Todd referred to the noise, or the noise, no, but the video, the music and the video, and you can feel those vibrations in the room. Can you imagine 150 decibel in those modules? So that's what we do. We do the testing for SLLs and Orion. We do also have, as a research center, we do technology to flight. And we are involved also in deep space exploration. What are these kind of technologies that are needed to really go beyond Earth? And we are working in solar electric propulsion, which is the technology that we think will be able to get us into far in the universe. The same thing has to say about aeronautics. We do cutting edge research for aeronautics. Things like hybrid electric. We're looking into how we can come out with a propulsion system that it doesn't depend on fuel, is cleaner, and it has the technology for the future, going more hybrid. So we'll have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about that, but also about how we can engage the local communities and how the business in the country are helping us both in aeronautic and space to fulfill the mission that NASA has.
Well, workforce development is always on the list, the lips of county commissioners. We're always looking the jobs that are created in our communities. We want to make sure that our workforce is prepared to take those jobs, that the people who live there will be able to have those jobs. And all of the literature is saying now that many of the STEM professionals will be retiring soon. And I guess the question is, what are you doing in your individual capacities to make sure that there is a pipeline with building on STEM education? What kind of outreach are you doing, or any other ways that you're doing that to make sure that we'll have a workforce going forward?
Okay.
So I will describe that three pieces of the puzzle. The first one is outreach. We go out to the schools. We engage the public in terms of what is NASA all about, to motivate students to stay in science, technology, and math fields, because we really need that pipeline. If we capture them at the beginning of their early stages, it's easier for that student to continue the path of interest in science and math. So that's the first step. The second step is getting involved with university and colleges around the area. We do need to make sure that we bring them in the first year, because at the same time that they're learning their skills, they're demonstrating that they have those skills. It provides us with the innovation and the creativity. Sometimes in looking at all these very hard problems, if we keep doing the same thing we have been doing, we may not get the right, the most efficient solution. So bring new talents. At the same time that they learn more about how they can apply science and math is always a win-win. So that's some of the things that we do. We do have a number of programs and programs with the local community for providing our expertise or our employees to go out and talk to students. And also we have the ability to give them what we call challenges to help us look at problems in a different way. So those are some of the things that we are doing to make sure that we motivate, inspire, but we also get the benefit of the innovation and their creativity.
I'll add a couple words. A couple of specific things, and we do a lot of the same things that Glenn does in that regard. We also really believe that experiential learning is a great method to get folks engaged and to prepare them for the kind of task teams that we have to put together to solve the problems that we have. And so we actually host locally a Rover Challenge that has about 100 teams from all over the country, college and high school level. Actually, teams from all over the world show up. We also have a student launch initiative where we have college teams that build 6-foot rockets and try to hit exactly 1 mile into space. And then this year we were a regional host for the for the Robotics Challenge, which is a really exciting thing that's kind of around the country. I think kids from just about every county now are participating in that. And then I've challenged my team. We've hit about 40 of our counties in Alabama. We're actually trying to hit all 67 by the end of this year, where we go in and we do these activities that Marla talked about. We get into the schools. Sometimes we're fortunate enough to get an astronaut there. And we partner with the schools. We give them lesson plans. We give them projects, things they can do with their students.
That's great. I know that there has been a lot of emphasis, for example, on girls and coding and trying to get them involved in STEM. Do you have any particular programs that are geared toward increasing the number of women who are in the population?
So one example, we did that, I think it was 2 years ago. We partnered with the Girl Scouts, and we have the opportunity to explain to Girl Scouts about NASA and what we do. But we have at that point in time also a radio amateur that partnered with us, and we were able to talk to one of the astronauts in the International Space Station. So the students have the opportunity to ask questions to the astronaut at the same time that we explain to them how communication works, why science and math is important, and it was with the Girl Scouts here in the Cleveland area. So we tried to find out those organizations that provide us with the ability to target some specific group, but really is any organization that really is engaged with the public. We try to find and design programs that meet their objectives at the same time that help us communicate and motivate students to stay in STEM.
Well, you have a lot of leaders, decision makers here, people who are making things happen in their communities. And probably hearing this panel is going to encourage them to become even more involved. What recommendations would you have for them about how to work with NASA to, as we, all of us together, prepare for the future?
So I would say just partner with us. We are good partners. We really do look for partners out there in the communities. Our budget for the last 40 years has really shrunk in real dollars since the Apollo program, and so we really do look to do public-private partnerships. We partner with academia. We partner with our state and local governments. We really look for ways to work together all the time. We are very involved in the schools in our towns, in the junior colleges, and even with the big universities too. And we have programs. We have programs like Pathways Internships. And right now we have about 200 kids from around the country at Marshall Space Flight Center that are working right alongside with our engineers. And they will take that experience back with them, whether they come to work for us or they go work somewhere else. They've had a chance to work at NASA and to work on these kind of programs that you see here. And so when you see your kids, your folks in your schools, encourage them to take part in these activities. And I'll make one plug for the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, which is in North Alabama. They have a space camp there. Over 850,000 kids have gone through that program. And if your child or someone you know has had a chance to go through it, you will find it's very transformational. They have an honors program every year where they have a Hall of Fame. And it is amazing every year to see those folks that have been through that program and how it has changed their lives and really made them to where they push further in their career no matter what they do.
Well, we've heard a lot about with the work with Mars and your usual kind of space work. I know another area that you've been doing some work in is aviation safety. Mm-hmm. Can you share with us NASA's role in all of that research?
Yeah, so as I mentioned it before, we do technology to flight, and we have responsibility for both space and aeronautic. In the aeronautic side, in terms of safety, for example, we have expertise in terms of icing research, and some of the things that we have in terms of how we go about icing, it is both in terms of wind tunnels. We have the ability to do simulations that kind of let us to understand what is the phenomena that is going on with icing, which would make it safer because we know a lot about the airframes and how we can de-ice the plane and what works in terms of the airframe. One of the phenomena that we experienced in the past few years is engine icing. And you would think that with the engine being so hot, that there's not being a probability the ice will form in the engine. But yes, it happens. So we were able to simulate and modify our tunnels to simulate that condition. And because of that, we can prevent, or we can look into how to mitigate the effect of icing in the engine. And companies come and test. When they develop the engines, they come and do the testing to make sure that they're certified and that problem has been mitigated. So that's an example of something that we do for the safety. But again, we do in the wind tunnel simulations for the propulsion areas within aviation.
Okay, are there any final remarks or anything you want to share? You want to talk about the rocket and how big it is?
I think we've made a good plug for the rocket. I would just tell you that I'd like to make a final plug for NASA. NASA is one of those things where all the news you see around the country, can sometimes get you down, and there's a lot of negativity out there. I challenge you to pay attention to the stories you hear about NASA. Our mission statement is to reach new heights and reveal the unknown, and I think we've been delivering on that for 40 years. And every time you hear a story about NASA, we have discovered that Pluto is not at all what we thought it would be, or we have an astronaut that has spent a year in space, or we're about to launch the next generation of the Hubble that's going to look even deeper into the universe, back to the beginning of time, or we have discovered things about our home planet Earth, which is, I'd like to say, the most important planet in our solar system to most of us. So just support us, and we thank you for the work you do to help us be successful. We know that not any of our money is spent in space; it's spent in all of your counties to do what we do, and we wouldn't be able to do what we do without you.
Yeah, I will say one thing that we didn't have the time to touch on is some of the programs that we have to transfer the technology that we develop, because we want to put that technology also to use in your businesses. So for the countries, we want to make sure that with the technology transfer through licenses. So if you go to our website, you can find more information about how to obtain some of the licenses so you can solve some of your technical problems or technical problems of the community, as well as we have some specific areas where we have like SBIRs, and some of you are familiar with that, but the idea is to bring the technology that is being developed by the small business into our mission. So there's two areas that we can do one way, and then the other way is coming to us. So please go into the website and look for opportunities to continue the collaboration. Your success is our success. So thank you so much for your support.
On that note, we close.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Yes.